A lot of issues on the table. Let's start with the land question, because that's a big one that's on people's minds. Is that coming up?
Yes, indeed. It seems as if the ANC is speeding ahead with its conference resolution of amending Section 25 of the Constitution. They've already voted with predominantly African or black political parties in the National Assembly, such as the Economic Freedom Fighters, your IFP, your UDMs, in amending Section 25 of the Constitution. Matole Motsecha, who chairs the Constitutional Review Committee for the African National Congress, particularly also in Parliament. He is leading that particular land reform program for the ANC on the constitutionality part. So he presented a particular roadmap or document to the ANC NEC on how they can roll out and effectively change the constitution of the country, and how and with methodology they could use in order to roll out land expropriation without compensation. That presentation was made at about 1 o'clock this afternoon after the ANC's National Working Committee meeting, which sets the agenda for the ANC NEC. We do know that the Minister of Agriculture and Land Reform, Togoti Diza, was also part of the meeting. She's also expected to speak on this particular perspective within the ANC NEC. And effectively, we've had the Treasurer General of the ANC, Paul Mashatile, saying that they are looking into implementing all of their conference resolutions in 2020 this year, as they are going towards their mid-year review or midterm review of the ANC 5-year term at the National General Council in June this year. So it's going to look like it's going to be a busy year policy-wise for the African National Congress, and implementation-wise of their policy resolutions that they took in 2017. We've already had the Minister of Finance, Tito Mboweni, questioning the ANC's decision to basically nationalize the South African Reserve Bank, saying that was a wrong decision. We did engage with him a little bit in the ANC NEC. He looked very jovial, but it looks like the ANC is speeding ahead with its program of implementing their conference resolutions. What is rather interesting, particularly on the issue of the South African Reserve Bank, you remember that the then Minister of Finance in the Fifth Administration, Nhlanhla Nene, had to ask the African National Congress to withdraw their motion in nationalizing the South African Reserve Bank, which was going to be supported by the Economic Freedom Fighters. Now you've got a pending motion in Parliament of the EFF on this particular issue of nationalizing the Reserve Bank. It would be rather interesting on how the ANC would vote on that particular issue. But as it stands, they are speeding ahead with the issue of amending Section 25 of the Constitution, which is land expropriation without compensation.
All right, so you've mentioned a number of names that will be presenting and have presented. I guess the man of the weekend probably is Pravin Gordhan.
Indeed, he is the man of the weekend, and he comes under the spotlight tomorrow morning when the NEC resumes at about 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. The key focus will be state-owned enterprises. He is due to deliver a report to the NEC on how far they've gone with the turnaround strategy tasked by President Cyril Ramaphosa on Eskom, on SAA, which are the two state-owned enterprises that fall under the jurisdiction, particularly at this point in time, that have seen various issues under Minister Pravin Gordhan. There are those within the ANC who are perceived to be part of the so-called Fight Back campaign, who wanted to see the back of Minister Pravin Gordhan being removed from cabinet, as opposed to being reshuffled by some who've called for Minister Gordhan to be reshuffled to Treasury and Tito Mboweni to go to public enterprises. There are some in the NEC, particularly those who are perceived to be part of the then faction of former President Jacob Zuma, who want to see the back of Mr. Pravin Gordhan. But there's also another issue of where the Deputy President of the country and of the ANC, David Mabuza, and the Treasurer General, Paul Mashatile, sit on this particular issue. You've heard the Treasurer General coming out and saying that, and resuscitating an old debate within the governing party, that public enterprises should be closed, and that entities like Eskom should move back to their various departments. SAA must go back to transport. So there's that debate also currently being brought back into the fore within the governing party. Then you've got the ANC stalwarts 101, the likes of Mavuso Msimang, coming out and defending Minister Pravin Gordhan, saying that he's a target of those who've had their hands in the cookie jar, who want to continue with the malfeasance and the looting and corrupting of Eskom to come back into the fore. They are now concocting and joining forces with one another to try and take over Eskom, and they will not allow that, because the ultimate target in this fight against Minister Pravin Gordhan is the eventual target is President Cyril Ramaphosa, and removing him from the seat of power at the Union buildings.
All right, I mean, on a practical level, I mean, politics to one side, we have an airline that's selling off its planes that some people are saying might not be able to take off if they don't get this 2 billion. What is the ANC? Are they in agreement about what needs to happen at a place like SAA?
If you look at the likes of ANC veteran and stalwart who was part of MK, people like Tony Yengeni, they've been very clear that they are against privatization of any of the state-owned enterprises. The ANC itself, in its conference resolutions in 2017, is against privatization of any of the state-owned enterprises or sale of any of the government assets. So it'd be rather interesting on how the ANC moves forward on this particular issue, with SAA getting rid of about 35 billion rands worth of assets that they are looking to sell in order to raise funds to stay afloat and to be able to take off the runway and stay in the skies. But you've also got another perspective that Tito Mboweni, the Minister of Finance, and the Deputy Minister of Finance, Dr. David Masondo, and the Director General, they were busy this week trying to find and scrape the government coffers of where they can find that extra 2 billion rands to try and pump in those funds so that SAA stays afloat. The Minister of Finance, Tito Mboweni, seems to be towing party line or government line at this point in time that there will be no sale of any state assets, particularly when it comes to selling off SAA. It doesn't look like his wishes will come true, but he is saying that if these state-owned enterprises don't stay afloat financially for themselves, instead of relying on the fiscus and on government bailouts, tough decisions will have to be made. He even made the same sentiments when he was engaging on his trip as the government leader to the World Economic Forum in Switzerland, Davos, that they will be taking tough decisions on these state-owned enterprises. But it would be rather interesting on how the ANC NEC finally resolves on this issue. Our political editor, Mzwandi Lembeja, speaking to President Cyril Ramaphosa in that one-on-one interview after the January 8 statement, he did say that he did take a decisive decision that they would rather not have SAA going into liquidation, but you would rather place it under business rescue. He said he made that unilateral decision himself and just basically instructed the Minister of Finance and the Minister of the Department of Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, to engage and to pursue that particular instruction or directive that he has given on the future of the South African Airways, saying that the South African carrier or the national carrier is very important and they can't let it go down and be liquidated. So it would be rather interesting on what this NEC finally resolves, and looking at the business acumen of the president, and he has to put on his business cap when it comes to keeping these state-owned enterprises afloat.
So from your experience, what will likely come out when they do their presser on Monday, Tuesday, whatever day it is, and they speak to the nation? Because whilst it's an internal party gathering, it does have an effect on you and I, citizens. What likely will come out of this meeting this weekend?
It seems as if the outcomes of the NEC will be communicated on Sunday before the ANC NEC Lekgotla, with all its government employees, your premiers, your metro municipality mayors, who will come on Sunday for the ANC Lekgotla, which will be preceded by the cabinet Lekgotla, which will take place early February, late January. So it looks as if those decisions will be communicated on Sunday by the Secretary General of the ANC, Ace Magashule. But the key individuals for this particular NEC and for the future of state-owned enterprises will be the leader or the person who heads the ANC Deployment Committee, the Deployment Committee led by Deputy President David Mabuza as per ANC Constitution. He and Paul Mashatile, the Treasurer General, are the swing votes, if one may say, because the NEC doesn't vote, but the swing voices, or their particular faction has the swing voice within this National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. We've had the Deputy President coming out guns blazing, particularly on the issue of the president being misled by the Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, and the then chairperson of the Eskom board, Jabu Mabuza, and the Eskom board. So he's been very clear and not mincing his words on the president being misled, being very vocal and frank and crude that the Eskom board has not done well when it comes to the issues of energy generation. The president himself couldn't defend him, the board and the minister, on the 11th of December when this question was posed to him. He basically chose to avoid it and say that their key focus is energy generation and to make sure that Eskom is afloat and is able to provide energy security in the country. So it'd be rather interesting on how the swing vote or the swing voices of the Paul Mashatile and the DD Mabuza faction within this National Executive Committee plays out. But it does seem as if the Deputy President wants to be on board and hands-on on the issue of these state-owned enterprises, not just Eskom, but also SAA, particularly looking at how he responded to that question that was posed to him on the president being misled, and how he's been very frank on how this Eskom board has not done so well when it comes to energy generation, but they've been able to get the corporate governance of the power utility well and clean up and basically expose those who've had their hands in the cookie jar and that have been part of the malfeasance at the power utility. We've seen the likes of those business people who've been arrested with involving corruption in the Kusile power plant in Mpumalanga, who have been apprehended and appearing before the courts of law.
All right, listening to you, swing votes, fight backs. It'll be interesting what conversation we'll be having with you probably Sunday night or Monday regarding this weekend's activities.
It's a Game of Thrones, and it's about who plays the chess game better and who knows how to give you the queen but be 2 steps ahead of you and hit you with a checkmate.
Thanks so much, Samkele. All right, that's our political reporter, Samkele Maseko, following the ANC NEC meeting, which is taking place at Irene this weekend.